Big update on the Kevin Durant trade front. We know a deal is getting closer to getting done. And now we've got some really important details that could potentially land Rudy Gobert in Phoenix in a deal that would send Kevin Durant to the Minnesota Timberwolves. That and the other options on the table for the Phoenix Suns today. I'm Trevor Lane. This is the Basketball Bulletin. Make sure you subscribe right here to the channel. Joining me is Donnie Freeman. Donnie, Jake Fischer on the wonderful Substack that he shares with Marc Stein had some really important details on this trade, and it feels like it could be today, it could be tomorrow. Like this is going to happen sooner rather than later. It's feeling like on the Durant trade front.
Yeah, it's really cool when the ball starts to get to rolling and you start to get more intel and we get closer and closer to these deals, coming to fruition. And, KD winding up on another team. I mean, at this point, it's kind of just like, a once every couple years thing for me with KD, but I'm excited to see, where he ultimately winds up.
All right, so right now the Suns, according to Jake Fischer, have a few stated goals in a Kevin Durant trade. They want to save money. They want to drop below the second-tier apron. They also want to add a center, and they don't want to rebuild. So it may be difficult to do all of those things. Save money, not really get worse on the court, and
what else they want to do.
Right, what else? And we'd like to get 5 superstars back, plus all the draft picks for Kevin Durant, right? But hey, aim high, Phoenix. Yeah. But they would like to add a starting center to their roster. They want to add pieces around Devin Booker that can help them win. I think that's important when we're trying to figure out what really is the best offer for the Phoenix Suns. But you take a look here, and Jake notes that Rudy Gobert for the Minnesota Timberwolves may be the best big man available to them. Now, Donnie, you talked about this the other day, that Gobert could make some sense in a trade for Kevin Durant for all parties involved, particularly if the Wolves decide they want to hang on to Naz Reid, they want to hang on to Julius Randle. You add KD into that mix, and then Gobert, long-term salary, but he certainly would check the box of a starting center for the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, Phoenix could definitely use Gobert's services there. He also accomplishes multiple goals for them. He's not a rebuild piece. He's a starting center. He's on the timeline with what they currently have, albeit a little bit on the older end of it, already being 33. Personally, I don't love that contract for him a couple years from now, but, if you're Phoenix, you do get a little bit more flexibility in the short term, potentially with this. So we'll see what happens with that. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, among the centers that would have been potentially available, I mean, they're not giving up Reed. Maybe it would have been Randall as a big / center type player they could play. But other than that, it was maybe Cat. I don't really see anybody else really in the mix that they could have really targeted, right?
And the Knicks are not mentioned as really like a serious suitor for Kevin Durant. And
there was a rumor that they didn't want Cat back in a deal anyway. So
yeah, which I don't know how much I buy that, but nonetheless, yes, that was out there. So now, if you are Minnesota, and there's some challenges with the deal with the Wolves, in that both teams are second-tier apron teams right now. Trying to save money in that deal can be tough, but Minnesota really went after KD at the trade deadline as well this past year, so we know there's significant interest on their part to land Kevin Durant. We've also heard they don't want to move Jaden McDaniels in the deal. If that's the case, Rudy Gobert's salary makes a lot of sense as the piece that could be going out to ultimately land Kevin Durant in Minnesota. But of course, they are not the only team that is interested in KD. The Houston Rockets have some level of interest as well, though Jake notes that there's questions about how far the Rockets will really go, to the point where their offer may get beat by these other offers because Houston really does not want to overpay for Kevin Durant. So it sounds like they are more of kind of like a distant option here for Kevin Durant, but obviously one phone call, one decision can change that. I do think Houston still makes a lot of sense as a landing spot for KD if they're willing to surrender the assets that it will take. Meanwhile, Miami is listed as a legitimate threat to land Kevin Durant, with guys like Andrew Wiggins and Duncan Robinson as a couple players who could step in and win right now. Plus, they have 3 potential tradable firsts, but the holdup with them may be that they are reluctant to give up Kel'el Ware, and we know how dead set Phoenix is in getting a center. So it's kind of funny, Donnie, the way this is all framed is kind of like, well, Houston can get in on it if they'll just give a little bit more here. Well, Miami can get it if they'll trade Kel'el Ware. It really feels like the Phoenix Suns may just be waiting for one of these teams to blink and give up the asset that they are right now reluctant to.
Yeah, well, if it's going to be Houston, does that mean that you're like, the deal is hinging on like a Jabari Smith potentially? Because
sure,
and I like I said, I wondered if Green, something like that, or Smith, or even like Smith with Van Vliet. Like if that's not just too much, like I don't know if I want to give up a younger guy like that. That's somebody that you would hope to have as part of your core. But from Miami, yeah, I do like the idea of getting back Wiggins and Robinson. I think they could fit in Phoenix with what Phoenix is trying to do, which for the record, we haven't really said this, but I think Phoenix should just try to pivot towards a rebuild in general. Like, I don't know that trying to stay afloat with the Devin Booker core is like,
why are they so hell-bent on keeping Devin Booker? Like, to me, Devin Booker's a great player.
He's a great player.
Is he one egg? Like, I get Milwaukee not wanting to lose Giannis because they want to build around him and all that. That's Giannis. Devin Booker's great, but Devin Booker's not that level of guy. It's a little confusing to me. Almost comes across to me as stubbornness why the Phoenix Suns are so dead set on keeping Devin Booker. If they could get their own draft capital back from Houston, if they could make some moves for the future, that may actually make the most sense. But it feels like Phoenix doesn't want to fully admit that they were wrong with the way they built out their roster. To me, their actions scream stubbornness more than anything else.
I wonder if they look at the run a few years ago and say, well, if the cards fall correctly, maybe we could find ourselves back in the NBA finals, right? Like they were just there, 2021. So, they're not too far removed from that. So maybe they are able to put the pieces around and get things to break rightly. But I don't expect that with the West being as competitive as it is now. Like I just can't, I personally think, and I get that he's their guy, they love him, all that stuff, but I think everything should be on the table for them personally at this point. But if they're going to try to pivot to stay afloat, I do like what Wiggins and Robinson can provide, and I do wonder if you just say, okay, well, we'll take that maybe with some draft capital, but we'll try to get a center on the market. Like maybe you can get something like that.
Yeah, and they could potentially be, if they can shave enough capital off their books, maybe they could be a team that could be a player out there on the market. Now, one of the things to
or
keep
a
in mind
third team
too,
gets them a center, right? Because there's probably a third team in these deals. Maybe they pull a center back in that too.
Very likely that we're going to see a third team, maybe even a fourth team in these deals. Probably already have a team or two lined up that can take some salary back, particularly if it's a deal with the Wolves. Would have to have a third team involved at least. Now, again, especially when you get into second tier apron, you can't aggregate salaries, and it gets very, very messy. But I will say this, and there's some reporting that Bradley Beal loves Phoenix, doesn't want to go anywhere, is not planning on going anywhere, so they're probably stuck with him.
If he doesn't want to leave, then you don't. I understand why you wouldn't trade him. Like I understand that for sure. Like if he is dead set on staying there, he loves the team, he wants to be around, then that's reason enough to keep him. I think. I still think. I thought we were talking about Booker.
Oh, Booker.
Whoops, I misheard you.
I was going to say Beal gets to decide where he goes. No. He's got that no trade clause.
If you said Beal, I heard Booker. I think because I'm still on the Booker thing. So all I said was about Booker. But yeah, Beal, he's if he doesn't want to leave, you don't have a choice.
Booker does indeed want to stay in Phoenix from everything we've heard. But again, but even Booker's 29 now. Like he's not like he's 24, and you've got a long window here with him. But the Suns are rumored to be willing to add Grayson Allen and or Royce O'Neal to any Kevin Durant deal in order to send out even more salaries. So they are very clearly saving money is a major component of any Kevin Durant trade from the Phoenix side of things. They want to save money. But the San Antonio Spurs, despite not being listed as one of the teams that Shams Charania had that was really in the hunt. Shams had Minnesota, had Miami, and Houston as the teams really in the hunt for Kevin Durant. The Spurs mentioned here by Jake Fischer as a team that has the draft capital to get Kevin Durant if they want, but there's a lot of skepticism towards the Spurs actually doing that. And part of that is Phoenix is not enamored with the players San Antonio has made available at this point. The Spurs are only willing to discuss Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, and Harrison Barnes. And so the Spurs, essentially the notion is that unless the Spurs are willing to include Stephon Castle or the number 2 pick, and they're not willing to, that's going to make it tough for the Spurs to get KD ultimately.
That's the exact same thing they did at the deadline with Fox. They said, this is what we're offering, either take it or leave it. And that's exactly what they're doing here. And I understand that they don't need to go out and get a Fox. They don't need to go out and get a Kevin Durant. But if they're able to, they're like, okay, we'll do it. And they're only offering up, veteran guys, Johnson, Barnes, Vassell, apparently, and saying, take it or leave it. So if you're Phoenix, maybe that's not your best offer. Maybe you look elsewhere. But that's the exact thing they did with Fox.
Well, and the problem is, as Jake notes here, yet number one, yes, the Spurs did get De'Aaron Fox. despite being, stubborn with their prices and not wanting to increase offers and all that. And it worked for them. They got De'Aaron Fox. But Devin Vassell, I like Devin Vassell a lot. Right. He's a really good player, but it's fair to wonder, how does he really fit with the Suns long term? Even if we're talking about a post Bradley Beal future with Phoenix, how does he fit alongside Devin Booker? Is that really a good partnership? So even there with Vassell, with his noteworthy talent, I don't know that he makes sense as the guy that the Suns are getting either. So that makes the Spurs, with their reluctance and the kind of awkward fit of the pieces they are willing to offer, makes the Spurs a bit of a distant team here. But to me, it feels like the teams with the most motivation, I think it should be Houston. I've been on this trade for a while. Houston should be all in on this, but not surrendering everything, but they should be very in on a Kevin Durant trade. I believe he's a perfect fit for what they need. But it does seem like right now, the two most motivated teams, if we're reading between the lines to get Kevin Durant, Minnesota and Miami. And it'll be really interesting to see, does one of those teams blink and offer up a little bit more than maybe they were hoping to, and be the team that lands Kevin Durant? Because it could happen, and it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be coming up this week. We do know for sure the Suns want to get it done before the NBA draft, and ideally they want to get it done even before that. So I think this is happening sooner rather than later, and right now Phoenix is just waiting to see if somebody blinks and surrenders the asset that right now they're reluctant to.
Absolutely. So any final prediction where he winds up?
I've been saying Houston for a while. I do wonder if now the interest from Minnesota is just too great and he winds up going there. Selfishly, my ideal landing spot for Kevin Durant, it's Miami. Get out of the West. Get out of the West. Go to Miami. The West is too crowded as it is.
Yeah. I think he could really make some noise in Minnesota for sure. And I think that'd be a good spot for him. I think it could be. I think that's most likely. I think that they can figure it out and put the pieces around them. But that's probably the hardest spot to land, right? Because they had, I think, the second most expensive team this season and all that. It's kind of hard to figure it out. But I'm sure where there's a will, there's a way. So
they'll try to find some kind of a way. But everybody, let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Where will KD land up? And what do you think about Rudy Gobert going to Phoenix in a Kevin Durant trade? Give us your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe right here to the channel. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.